My girlfriend cheated, so I exposed her at her own birthday party. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine projected on a big screen for all to see. My name is Leo and I am 25 years old. For the last 3 years, I thought I was living in a dream. The dream had a name, Maya. She was the kind of beautiful that didn't just turn heads, it made them forget where they were. Sun-kissed brown hair that fell in perfect ways around her shoulders, eyes the color of warm honey, and a smile that could convince you that everything, no matter how broken, could be fixed. We met in a crowded coffee shop, a classic meet-cute straight out of a movie. I spilled my latte on her white blouse, and instead of being angry, she laughed, a sound like wind chimes, and told me it was an excuse for her to finally get a new one. From that moment, I was a goner. Our relationship bloomed with an intensity that scared us both. We moved in together after a year, adopting a scruffy terrier named Gus and filling our small apartment with plants, books, and the scent of her vanilla candles. We talked about the future, a house with a backyard, maybe a couple of kids, growing old together on a porch swing. It was perfect. So perfect it felt like I was walking on air, and I never once thought to look down to see how far I'd fall. A huge part of that perfection was Liam. Liam was Maya's best friend, her platonic soulmate, as she called him. They had known each other since kindergarten, a bond forged in shared secrets, scraped knees, and years of unwavering support. At first, I admired their friendship. It was a testament to Maya's character, her ability to love and be loyal. Liam was a great guy, funny, easygoing, and always treated me like a brother. The three of us would hang out constantly, grabbing beers, going to concerts, or just chilling on our couch watching bad horror movies. I never questioned it. Why would I? Maya was completely open about her relationship with him. She'd show me their funny text exchanges, tell me about his dating woes, and he, in turn, would give me advice on how to handle Maya when she was in one of her moods. He was the brother she never had, and the friend I was glad she had. The first crack in this pristine facade was so small I almost missed it. It was a Tuesday night. I was working late on a design project, my mind consumed by vectors and color palettes. Maya texted me saying she was going out with Liam for a quick drink to cheer him up after a bad day at work. I texted back, "No problem, tell him I said hi." An hour later, I decided to take a break and scrolled through Instagram. I saw a new post from Maya, a selfie of her and Liam at a dimly lit bar. They were smiling, heads close together. It was a normal picture, the kind they'd taken 100 times before. But in the background, reflected in the mirror behind them, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was Maya's hand resting on the table. But it wasn't just resting. Her fingers were laced with Liam's, their hands clasped together in a way that was anything but platonic. It was a secret gesture, a hidden intimacy meant for them and them alone. I stared at the photo, my heart thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I zoomed in, my fingers trembling. There was no mistaking it.
It was the handhold of a couple, not a friend's. I quickly checked the comments. No one else had noticed. They were all just saying how cute they were, how great their friendship was. I felt sick. I closed the app and stared at my computer screen, the designs blurring into meaningless shapes. When Maya came home a couple of hours later, smelling of beer and his cologne, she kissed me on the cheek and told me she loved me. I just nodded. The image of their intertwined hands burned into the back of my mind. I didn't say a word. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just a weird angle, a momentary lapse. But the seed of doubt, once planted, began to grow a tangled, ugly weed in the garden of my perfect life. The next few days were a masterclass in self-deception. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a trick of the light, a misunderstanding. I tried to erase the image from my mind, to go back to being the blissfully ignorant boyfriend. But the world is a different place when you start looking for cracks. Suddenly, they were everywhere. Maya's phone, which used to lie face up on the coffee table, was now always screened down. She started taking it with her into the bathroom. She had a new passcode, a 6-digit one, when for years it had been a simple 4-digit pattern I knew. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, saying she'd read an article about cybersecurity and wanted to be safer. It was a plausible excuse, but it felt like a flimsy curtain pulled over a very dark window. Her behavior with Liam changed too, or maybe I was just noticing it for the first time. The easy, open friendship now seemed to have a new layer of performance to it. Their laughter was a little too loud, their hugs a second too long. When he'd come over, there was a new energy in the room, a current that passed between them that left me feeling like an outsider in my own home. I started replaying conversations in my head, remembering times when she'd cancel plans with me because Liam needed her. I remembered the weekend she went away with him and a group of friends to a cabin, telling me it was just a platonic group trip. She'd seemed distant on the phone, her words clipped, her attention elsewhere. I had chalked it up to bad reception. Now I wondered if he was in the room with her, listening to every word. The sick feeling in my stomach became a constant companion. I was losing weight, my sleep was fractured, and I found myself flinching every time her phone buzzed. I was becoming a person I didn't recognize, a paranoid, suspicious man driven by a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. I needed to know. I couldn't live in this limbo of suspicion and denial. The opportunity presented itself on a rainy Friday night. Maya was in the shower, singing off-key to a song on the radio. Her laptop was open on the bed, the screen glowing. I knew I shouldn't. It was a violation of her privacy, a line I never thought I would cross. But the image of their hands, the secret smiles, the locked phone, it was all screaming at me to look. With a heart hammering against my ribs, I walked over to the bed. My hand trembled as I touched the trackpad. The screen was open to her email inbox. I scanned the subject lines, nothing out of the ordinary. Then my eyes fell on her social media messenger, open in a tab. I clicked on it. There it was, her conversation with Liam. I started scrolling, and with every line I read, a piece of my world crumbled into dust. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown, emotionally charged affair. The messages went back months. They started innocently enough, but quickly escalated into something deeply intimate and romantic. "I miss you more," she had written. "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me last night." He replied, "I hate pretending. I hate that I have to wait until he's not around to even hold your hand." They talked about a future together, a life after me. They had pet names for each other. They dissected our relationship, my flaws, my shortcomings. I read about how they'd meet in secret, in cheap motels off the highway, in his car after work. They planned a trip together, a romantic getaway to the coast, telling their friends they were going separately. The betrayal was so total, so complete, it felt physical, like a punch to the gut. I felt the air leave my lungs, and I had to sit down on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I scrolled until I found the final nail in the coffin. It was a message from Liam from a few days ago. It was a link to a hotel reservation for this upcoming weekend, the same weekend as her surprise birthday party that her family was throwing. Below the link, he had written 3 words, "Can't wait, my love." As I stared at the screen, a notification popped up in the corner of her laptop. It was from her mom's group chat. The message read, "Okay, final head count for Maya's surprise party is 30. Leo, thank you so much for offering to put together the slideshow. It's going to be the best gift ever." And in that moment, the suffocating pain in my chest hardened into something cold, sharp, and terrifyingly clear. A plan began to form, a dark and deliciously wicked idea that promised a different kind of closure. The rage that followed was not a hot, explosive fire. It was a cold, calculated ice that flooded my veins, chilling me to the bone. Every trace of the heartbroken, devastated Leo was gone, replaced by a calm, methodical architect of destruction. A quiet breakup, a tearful confrontation, a "why did you do this to me?" None of it felt sufficient. It was too private, too easy for her to spin into a narrative where she was the victim of a man who couldn't handle her close friendship. No, she had stolen my future, poisoned my present, and made a fool out of me in the most intimate way possible. She wanted a spectacle? I would give her an Oscar-worthy performance, and the grand finale would be a gift she would never forget. The next day, I was a new man. I was the perfect, loving boyfriend. I woke Maya up with coffee and kisses, my heart a cold, dead stone in my chest as I told her how much I loved her. I was overly affectionate, showering her with compliments, my smile a carefully constructed mask. She seemed a little taken aback by my intensity, but she lapped it up, her guilt apparently no match for her ego. When her sister called to finalize details for the surprise party, I put the phone on speaker and eagerly volunteered to handle the audio-visual aspects. "I want to make a really special slideshow," I said, my voice dripping with a sincerity that made me want to vomit. "A trip down memory lane. I think it would be a beautiful gift for her and for everyone there." Her sister was ecstatic. Her mom called me 5 minutes later, thanking me for being so thoughtful. The irony was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. They all thought I was the best boyfriend in the world. And, in a way, I was about to give Maya a gift no one else could. The following days were a blur of dark, purposeful work. While Maya was at work, I would sit at my computer, a grim smile on my face, and prepare my presentation. I became a digital archaeologist, excavating the ruins of our relationship. I started with the good stuff, of course. Photos of us on our first anniversary, our trip to the Grand Canyon, the day we brought Gus home. I set it to her favorite sentimental songs, the ones that always made her cry. I wanted to lull her, and everyone else, into a false sense of security. I wanted to build the beautiful, glittering tower of our love as high as I could before I detonated the explosives at its foundation. Then I began to gather the evidence. I took screenshots of the most damning messages between her and Liam. I found the photos from their secret trips, the ones they were foolish enough to save on the cloud. I even found a receipt for a hotel room booked under his name, the same one from the reservation link. I organized it all into a meticulous narrative. The slideshow would start with our perfect love story. Then, without warning, it would plunge into the sordid details of her betrayal. Each slide would be a fresh wound. I spent hours on the transitions, the timing, the music. The first part would be set to a soft acoustic ballad. The second part, the reveal, would be silent. The silence, I decided, would be more powerful than any dramatic music. It would force everyone in the room to sit with the raw, ugly truth, to let it sink in without distraction. On the last slide, I found a picture of them kissing, taken in what looked like a hotel room mirror. I superimposed the words, "Happy Birthday, Maya," in a pretty pink script at the bottom. It was my masterpiece of malice. On the night of the party, I got dressed in my nicest shirt, the one Maya had bought me for my last birthday. I looked in the mirror and practiced my smile. It looked genuine, warm, and full of love. I was ready. I put the USB drive, my little stick of dynamite, into my pocket. It felt heavy, cold, and alive with potential. I took one last look around our apartment, at the life we had built together, and felt nothing. Just a quiet, steady resolve. It was time to go to the party. The venue was a small, upscale event hall her parents had rented. It was already buzzing with a low hum of anticipation when I arrived. Fairy lights were strung across the ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow on the room. Tables were draped in white linen, and a long table was laden with gifts. Her family and friends were mingling, their voices a cheerful murmur. I saw her mom, a kind woman with tired eyes, and she gave me a huge hug, thanking me again for the slideshow. I saw her dad, a stern-looking man with a firm handshake, who clapped me on the shoulder and said I was a good man for taking such good care of his daughter. Each interaction was a twist of the knife, a reminder of the web of lies I was about to tear apart. Everyone was in on the secret. Everyone but Maya. They were all co-conspirators in this surprise, but they had no idea what the real surprise was. I felt a strange sense of power, like a spy behind enemy lines. I had a secret too, and mine was a bomb. I found the AV station in the corner, a projector and a laptop connected to a large screen that was currently displaying a picture of a smiling Maya. I tested the USB drive, making sure my presentation was ready to go. It was. The perfect weapon, waiting to be deployed. 10 minutes later, the lights dimmed slightly and her mom hushed everyone. Maya's sister stood by the door, phone in hand, ready to give the signal. The room fell silent, a collective breath held in anticipation. We heard the click of the front door opening and then her voice, light and happy, as she talked to her sister. "Why is it so dark in here? Is everything okay?" Then the lights flicked on and the room erupted. Surprise! The sound was deafening, a joyous explosion of voices and laughter. Maya stood frozen in the doorway for a second, her hands flying to her mouth in genuine shock. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in all the familiar faces, the decorations, the cake. Then her eyes found mine, and they lit up with a love and gratitude that was so pure, so convincing, it almost made me falter. She ran to me, throwing her arms around my neck. "You did this," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Leo, I love you so much. This is the best gift ever." I hugged her back, my arms wrapping around her, my face buried in her hair that smelled of vanilla and betrayal. "I love you too, Maya," I said, my voice steady. "Happy birthday." The party kicked into high gear. Music played, people chatted, and drinks flowed. Maya was the center of attention, glowing with happiness, opening gifts and thanking everyone. She clung to my arm, introducing me to her distant aunts as the most amazing boyfriend in the world. I smiled and nodded, playing my part to perfection. About an hour into the party, I saw him. Liam arrived, slipping in quietly through a side door. He made a beeline for Maya, and they had a brief, whispered conversation. He handed her a small wrapped box. As he did, their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, the facade dropped. It was a look of pure, unadulterated intimacy, a secret shared between two lovers in a crowded room. No one else seemed to notice, but I saw it, and it was all the fuel I needed. An hour later, after the cake had been cut and eaten, Maya's dad tapped a spoon against his glass, getting everyone's attention. He said a few sweet words about his daughter, and then he turned to me. And now, Leo has a very special presentation for us, a little trip down memory lane. He handed me a microphone. My heart was pounding, but my hand was steady. I walked to the center of the room, all eyes on me. I looked at Maya, who was beaming at me, her eyes shining with love and trust. "Thank you," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the now quiet hall. "Maya, you know how much I love you, and I wanted to give you a gift that shows just how much our journey together means to me. A gift to share with all the people you love most." I smiled at her one last time, a slow, deliberate smile. Then I turned and walked towards the projector. I plugged the USB drive into the laptop. The screen flickered and my presentation began. The first slide appeared, a picture of Maya and me on the beach in Mexico, the sun setting behind us, our faces pressed together in a kiss. A soft, romantic acoustic guitar song began to play from the speakers. A collective "ah" rippled through the crowd. Maya squeezed my hand, her head resting on my shoulder. I could feel her happiness, her complete and utter trust in me, and it was like a poison seeping into my skin. The slideshow continued. A photo of us building a snowman, our cheeks red from the cold. A picture of us at a concert, singing at the top of our lungs. A candid shot of her laughing in our kitchen, Gus sitting at her feet. Each picture was a memory, a moment from a life that now felt like it had belonged to someone else. The song swelled, reaching its emotional crescendo. Maya was crying softly, tears of joy streaming down her face. Her mom was dabbing her eyes with a napkin. The entire room was enveloped in the warm, fuzzy glow of our perfect love story. It was the perfect setup. Then, the music abruptly cut out. The screen went black for a moment. The sudden silence was jarring. People shifted in their seats, confused. Maya lifted her head from my shoulder, a questioning look on her face. The next slide appeared. It wasn't a photo. It was a screenshot of a text message. The sender was Maya. The recipient was Liam. The message read, "I can't wait to be with you for real. I'm so sick of pretending." A wave of confusion washed over the room. A few people gasped. The smiles faded. Maya's face went pale, the color draining from it in an instant. Her smile evaporated, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. Before anyone could process what they were seeing, the slide changed again. This time, it was a photo. It was Maya and Liam sitting in a dimly lit restaurant, the same one from the Instagram post. But this picture wasn't from her account. It was from his, a private account I had managed to access through a linked profile. And in this photo, they weren't just holding hands under the table. He was leaning across the table, kissing her, his hand cupping her face. The room was utterly silent now, the only sound the low hum of the projector. I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes darting from the screen to Maya's frozen face, then back to the screen. The slideshow continued, a relentless, methodical dismantling of her life. A screenshot of a hotel reservation for 2 adults. A photo of them in a car, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. A series of increasingly intimate text messages detailing their plans, their feelings, their contempt for me. "He's so clueless, it's almost sad," one of her messages read. I watched her family's reactions. Her mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief and pain. Her father's face, once jovial, was now a mask of cold, stone-cold fury. Her friends stared at the screen, their expressions a mixture of shock and disgust. I saw Liam, who had been standing near the back, try to silently slip out of the room. But Maya's brother had seen him too, and he cut off his escape, his arms crossed over his chest, his face like thunder. Maya was just standing there, motionless, her body trembling. The world she had so carefully constructed was crumbling around her, and she was powerless to stop it. The final slide appeared. It was the picture of them kissing in the hotel mirror, the one I had so carefully crafted. And at the bottom, in that pretty pink script, were the words, "Happy birthday, Maya." I let the image hang in the air for a long, silent moment. Then I slowly turned from the screen to face her. Our eyes met across the silent, horrified room. Her eyes were no longer just filled with horror. They were filled with a dawning, terrible realization. She knew. She knew I had done this. She knew it was over. The silence in the room was a living, breathing thing. It was heavy, suffocating, and filled with the sound of 50 hearts breaking at once. No one screamed. No one shouted. The shock was too profound, the betrayal too raw for such simple reactions. The silence was finally broken by a sound that cut through the air like a shard of glass. The quiet, gut-wrenching sob of Maya's mother. It was a sound of pure maternal pain, and it seemed to unlock the frozen horror in the room. A low murmur began to ripple through the crowd, a wave of whispers and gasps. People started looking at Maya not with love, but with a mixture of pity and revulsion. They looked at me, their eyes wide with a dawning understanding of the cold, calculated justice that had just been served. Maya stood frozen for a moment longer, her eyes locked on mine. Then the dam broke. A strangled cry escaped her lips, and she lunged towards me, her face a contorted mask of rage and desperation. Her hands reached for me, her fingers clawing, her mouth opening to unleash a torrent of words, excuses, accusations, pleas. But before she could touch me, before she could speak, I took a step back. My face was a blank canvas, devoid of any emotion. No anger, no sadness, no triumph. Just a quiet, final finality. The message in my eyes was clear. We have nothing left to say to each other. My lack of reaction was more devastating than any shouted words could have been. It was a complete and total withdrawal of my love, my presence, my entire existence from her life. Her hands fell to her sides, her momentum stopped by the invisible wall I had thrown up between us. She just stood there, trembling, tears and mascara streaming down her face, a ruined monument to her own duplicity. I didn't wait for the fallout. I didn't need to see her father turn his icy gaze on Liam, who was now trapped in a corner, looking like a terrified animal. I didn't need to see her friends turn away from her, their faces etched with disappointment. My part was over. My gift had been delivered. I turned my back on the wreckage of her birthday party, on the shattered remains of our 3-year relationship. I walked calmly towards the exit, my steps steady and sure. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. I saw her father, a man who had once clapped me on the shoulder and called me a good man, now standing over Liam, his voice a low, dangerous growl. I saw her mother being led away by her sister, her face buried in a tissue. And I saw Maya, alone in the center of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of her life, the ghost of her surprise party still clinging to the walls. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cool night air. The rage, the cold fury, the need for revenge, it all drained out of me, leaving behind a vast empty space. But in that emptiness, there was something else, a sense of liberation, a feeling of being unburdened. I had lost a girlfriend, a future I had thought was real, but I had also freed myself from a lie. I had walked into that party a victim, but I was walking out a survivor. I got in my car and started the engine. The city lights blurred past my window, a smear of color against the dark canvas of the night. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I was moving forward. The price of my freedom had been high, a public spectacle of destruction. But as I drove away from the chaos, leaving the sound of her world falling apart behind me, I knew one thing for certain. It was a gift she had truly earned.